What if I told you that over 2,500 years ago, a man had a dream that foretold the very future we're living in now? A dream that spoke of a kingdom made of iron and clay, an impossible blend of strength and fragility, of the divine and the artificial. Was it just a coincidence? Or a prophecy about the age of technology, artificial intelligence, and transhumanism? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover could completely change the way you see the modern world. In ancient Babylon, one of the most powerful empires in history, King Nebuchadnezzar had a vision that tormented him. He saw a gigantic statue with a head of gold, a chest of silver, a belly of bronze, legs of iron, and feet made of iron mixed with clay. None of his wise men, magicians, or astrologers could explain its meaning, until a young prophet named Daniel was summoned before the throne. Daniel revealed that the dream was not just about human kingdoms and empires, but about the course of human history until the end of time. Each part of that statue represented an era, a civilization, a global dominion, but the most enigmatic detail was its feet, the iron and the clay, a symbol of a divided empire, partly strong, partly fragile, that would emerge at the end of all time. Now, think with me. What could this combination mean? Iron, the symbol of metal, machines, technology, and progress. Clay, the symbol of flesh, creation, and humanity. Could Daniel, thousands of years ago, have already foreseen the emergence of transhumanism, the fusion of man and machine, flesh and silicon? We live in an age where the line between the natural and the artificial is blurring. Brain chips are being implanted in humans. Artificial intelligences are learning on their own, and science openly talks about perfecting creation. We are, perhaps unwittingly, heading toward exactly what Daniel described, a realm where iron tries to mix with clay, but never quite fuses. Have you ever stopped to think about what this means spiritually? In a world that seeks immortality through technology, that wants to dominate nature itself, are we repeating the same mistake of Eden, trying to be like God? What if this prophecy was not just a distant warning, but a code left for our generation, revealing that the last empire would be built not on nations, but on systems, algorithms, and modified bodies? Most strikingly, Daniel said that in the days of this kingdom, something would happen. A stone, not cut by human hands, would destroy the entire structure. It's as if the prophecy itself said, when man tries to unite what has been separated, when iron and clay finally coexist, the end will be near. But before we get to that point, we need to understand what was really behind Nebuchadnezzar's dream, and why it continues to echo throughout history to this day. Because, believe me, there are details in this prophecy that don't appear in sermons or history books. What Daniel revealed goes far beyond Babylon, Greece, or Rome. He saw a time when humankind would seek to transcend its own nature, and that time is now. Brace yourself, because in the following scenes you'll understand why this ancient prophecy may actually be the most accurate description of our technological future. And most frighteningly, it may already be coming true before our eyes. And do you know what strikes me most about this prophecy? It's how it speaks directly to our time, as if Daniel were describing not just kingdoms and empires, but the very soul of modern humanity, torn between the desire to be eternal and the fear of ceasing to be human. Every technological advancement we achieve seems to bring us a little closer to this kingdom of iron and clay, where power and fragility coexist in the same body. And that's why I want to extend an invitation to you now. If this topic resonates with you, if you somehow feel that we are truly experiencing the fulfillment of these ancient prophecies, leave your comments below with what has touched you most so far. I read each comment carefully because that's where the conversation continues. It's where I understand what you're thinking, what sparks your curiosity, what concerns you. This exchange is what keeps this space alive, a space where we seek to understand, together, the signs of the times. And don't forget to leave a like, because it makes all the difference. It may seem like a simple gesture, but when you like the video, YouTube understands that this content is important and shows it to more people who are also seeking answers about what's happening in the world. This is how the message spreads, reaching hearts that may never have heard about the true meaning behind these prophecies. And if you're new here, just arriving and want to continue following this kind of content, ancient stories that reveal the future, prophetic connections with technology, and signs of the end times, then subscribe to the channel and activate the bell. Because what's to come is even more profound. Your subscription is what sustains this journey, what allows us to continue investigating and sharing these truths hidden between the lines of history. What we're building here isn't just a channel. It's a community of awakened people who look to the past with spiritual eyes and see the future with discernment. And knowing you're part of it is what gives meaning to each new episode. Now, take a deep breath, because the next part of this story will make you see Nebuchadnezzar's prophecy in a new light. Let's delve deeper into this enigma of iron and clay and discover what it truly reveals about humanity's ultimate destiny. Nebuchadnezzar was the most powerful man on earth, a king whose name made kings and nations tremble, master of an empire that seemed eternal. Babylon was the beating heart of the ancient world. Its hanging gardens defied time, its walls reflected human grandeur. But one silent night, this invincible man was disturbed by something no army could withstand. A dream. A dream so intense that it left him awake sweating, with a racing heart and a shaken spirit. He knew it was not just a figment of his imagination. There was something supernatural about this vision, something that surpassed logic and power. In the dream, he saw a colossal statue. Its head was of pure gold, its chest and arms of silver, its belly and thighs of bronze, its legs of iron, and its feet, curiously, were made of iron mixed with clay. A mixture that made no sense, something that by nature could not be united. And before this image, the king felt fear. Not ordinary fear, but the kind of fear that arises when a man realizes that something much greater is moving behind the reality he believes he controls. Desperate to understand the meaning, Nebuchadnezzar summoned his wise men, magicians, and soothsayers. He promised rewards, but also threatened terrible punishments for anyone who didn't reveal the secret, and none of them succeeded. All failed in the face of the mystery. Then came Daniel, a young Hebrew captive in Babylon, but with a different spirit. He didn't seek power, he didn't speak arrogantly, he simply prayed. He asked God for understanding, and he was answered. Daniel stood before the king and humbly said something that would change everything. The mystery the king asks for, neither wise men, nor magicians, nor diviners can reveal. But there is a God in heaven who reveals secrets. At that moment, human power fell silent. The young man began to describe the dream with precision, every detail, every metal, every shape. And when he finished, he explained its meaning. That statue represented a timeline, a prophecy that outlined the empires that would rule the world, one after another, until the end of time. The head of gold was Babylon itself, a symbol of glory, luxury, and dominion. The silver chest represented the kingdom of the Medes and Persians, which would come later. The belly of bronze, the Greek empire of Alexander the Great. Swift, brilliant, and devastating. The legs of iron, in turn, were Rome, the empire that crushed everything with its strength, its laws, and its armies. But what intrigued Daniel most were the feet, iron and clay. The prophet explained that this would be the last empire, divided, inconsistent, partly strong, partly weak. A kingdom that would try to unite, but deep down would never fully merge. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the symbolism behind this statue is more than a simple historical metaphor. It carries a hidden truth about human nature, the cycle of civilizations, and the ultimate destiny of our era. Each metal speaks not only of empires, but of mindsets. Gold represents splendor and glory, the quest for recognition and power. Silver speaks of values and alliances. Bronze, of expansion and conquest. Iron, of strength and dominance. But clay is human, fragile, mortal, vulnerable. And when iron and clay try to coexist, a paradox arises, the same one we see today between technological advancement and emotional fragility, between the machine and the soul. It's the tension between what man builds and what he is. And perhaps that's why this prophecy rings so true today. Because we live in a time when human beings want to be indestructible, but remain broken inside. They want to master the subject but get lost in their own minds. They want to be eternal, but fear looking within and realizing they're made of dust. Daniel's message was more than an explanation for the king. It was a reminder for all humanity. No empire lasts forever. Every human construction, no matter how solid it may seem, bears invisible cracks. And it is in these cracks that the truth hides. Because what truly sustains the world is not iron or gold. It is the spiritual essence that humanity seeks to replace. Think about it. If Nebuchadnezzar had simply accepted the power of his empire, he would never have received the revelation. It was the discomfort of the dream, the fear of the inexplicable, that opened the door to the truth. And, likewise, it is when modern certainties begin to crumble that consciousness awakens. It is when the system we have created reveals its flaws that the prophecy is fulfilled, silently, within history. What Daniel saw was a cycle, a journey of humanity toward its own limit. And, curiously, we are repeating the same steps, only now with different names: globalization, digital control, biotechnology, artificial intelligence. But the pattern is the same. Iron and clay keep trying to mix and still fail. It is this impossible blend that defines us, the constant attempt to unite the material with the spiritual, logic with mystery, code with consciousness. This is the silent struggle of our generation, and perhaps the greatest challenge of the century. Because the same impulse that makes us create can also destroy us. And this is where Nebuchadnezzar's prophecy takes on new meaning. It's not just about empires rising and falling. It's about man trying to be God and discovering, in the most painful way, that there are limits that cannot be crossed. If you've made it this far, tell me in the comments one word that sums up what you're feeling right now. It could be impact, revelation, or awakening. I want to know how this story resonated with you, because what follows will delve even deeper into the true meaning of this iron and clay enigma. Each material of that statue revealed something deeper than simple empires. It was as if time itself were being molded into layers of metal, each representing a phase of the human journey on Earth. The head of gold was the splendor of Babylon, a symbol of the glory and vanity of man when he sees himself as the center of the world. An empire that believed itself to be eternal, built on the illusion that power could replace the divine. Nebuchadnezzar reigned as if nothing could stop him, and perhaps that is why gold was the first metal, shiny, pure, but also corruptible. Next came the silver chest, representing the Medo-Persian Empire, a kingdom marked by alliances and divisions, a system of two forces coexisting within the same structure. Silver, though valuable, no longer has the same luster as gold. It is colder, more practical, more focused on diplomacy and control. It was the age of great administrations and decrees. Man was beginning to understand the power of order, but also the weight of the laws he himself created. And here, the symbolism is powerful. The heart of the statue, the chest, is silver, as if the center of the world had stopped pulsing with faith and started beating with logic. Next, the belly of bronze, which symbolizes the Greek Empire of Alexander the Great. Bronze is tough, yet flexible. It is the metal of weapons, expansion, philosophy, and art. Alexander took Greek culture to the ends of the earth, spreading ideas, systems, and a new way of thinking. It was the beginning of the idolatry of reason. Man began to believe he could understand everything, measure everything, master everything. It was a time of discovery, but also of pride. And, once again, the prophecy revealed a pattern. Each empire seemed stronger than the last, but spiritually further from its origin. Then came the legs of iron, representing the Roman Empire. The longest, the most powerful, the most ruthless of all. Iron symbolizes brute force, military dominance, and control through law and the sword. Rome didn't just conquer territories, it conquered mindsets. It created roads, armies, governments, and systems that still influence the modern world today. It was an empire that crushed all that opposed it. Iron does not bend. It resists, imposes itself, destroys. But even iron rusts. And then we come to the most mysterious part of the prophecy, the feet, made of iron and clay. A symbol of contradiction, of impossible fusion, of instability. Daniel said it would be a divided kingdom, partly strong and partly fragile. An empire that would try to unite but would never be cohesive. Strong as iron, weak as clay. What Daniel saw was no ordinary empire. It was something hybrid, unlike anything that came before. And perhaps, without realizing it, we are already living in that very time. Because there has never been an era as powerful as ours. A global empire without borders, without kings, without visible armies. Governed by data, algorithms, networks, and digital systems. We live connected all the time, and dependent as never before. Our lives, our economy, our communication, and even our faith are intertwined with the iron of machines and the clay of the human soul. It is the civilization of the cold touch of screens and the fragility of feelings. A world that claims to be united, but is more divided than ever. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because Daniel's prophecy not only describes what was to come, but also reveals the spiritual pattern behind history. Gold represented the brilliance of human glory. Iron, the strength of domination. But clay represents a return to the beginning, to human nature, to the vulnerability we always try to hide. When Daniel speaks of iron and clay, he's talking about us. Of a time when humanity would think itself invincible, but inside it would be cracked. And the most fascinating thing is to see how this mixture manifests itself in every aspect of modern life today. Think of our technology, machines that seem indestructible but collapse with a simple coding error. Think of our societies, connected by networks that promise unity but generate isolation. Think of our mindset, a generation that believes it has reached the pinnacle of knowledge but lives immersed in anxiety and emptiness. Iron and clay, strength and fragility. Progress and ruin walking side by side. This is the essence of the kingdom Daniel saw, an empire that belongs not to a single people, but to a global mindset. A system built on the promise of efficiency and digital immortality, but sustained by increasingly fragile hearts. It is a portrait of our time, interconnected civilizations, connected economies, but disconnected souls. It is iron and clay trying to coexist, the artificial and the organic, the eternal and the finite. And there's something almost poetic about it all, because the same material that was once used to build swords now builds chips. The same iron that once dominated armies now powers the machines that control our decisions. It's as if history has come full circle, and we're once again faced with the same dilemma. What will man do with the power he possesses? The hidden truth behind this prophecy isn't just about politics or history, but about the transformation of human consciousness. We live in an age of transition, between the spiritual and the technological, between flesh and silicon. And the more we try to unite what is incompatible, the more we feel the weight of this division. Because iron may give strength, but it is clay that makes us human. If you understood this duality and felt the weight of this reflection, leave a word in the comments that summarizes what this means to you. It could be balance, fragility, or consciousness. I want to know how this mixture of iron and clay resonates within you, because that's precisely where true revelation begins. Iron and clay, two such different substances, yet united in a single prophecy. When Daniel described the statue's feet, he wasn't just talking about physical materials. He was revealing a symbolic, almost spiritual language about the human condition at the end of time. Iron, in its cold, firm, and impenetrable nature, represents the machine, the system, calculation, and control. It is the domain of reason, logic, and efficiency. Clay, in contrast, is moldable, sensitive, and unstable. It represents the flesh, divine creation, the spirit that feels, suffers, and loves. It is the symbol of humanity in its purest essence. These two elements were not meant to merge. They coexist, but they do not unite. And yet, humanity has tried for centuries to achieve this impossible fusion, to transform fragility into strength, to replace the heart with a machine, to become something beyond flesh. This is the essence of transhumanism, the quest for immortality through metal, the attempt to erase the boundaries between the body and technology. It's curious to think that Daniel, thousands of years ago, saw this, iron and clay trying to blend, but never truly becoming one. Today, this prophecy seems more alive than ever. We live surrounded by iron disguised as technology. Our bodies are still made of clay, but our minds are already partially connected to a system that thinks, decides, and acts for us. Every touch of a screen, every piece of data shared, every voice command delivered to artificial intelligence brings us closer to this fusion. And herein lies the hidden truth. Iron isn't just in machines, it's entering human consciousness. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because the symbolism of iron and clay goes far beyond the contrast between man and machine. It speaks to the transformation of our very identity. Think about it. Clay is moldable. It represents divine creation, the power to be altered, healed, restored. Iron, on the other hand, is rigid, representing the structure that does not change, the system that imposes. When man chooses iron over clay, he is choosing control over faith, calculation over compassion, power over purpose. This tension between these two poles defines the world we live in. Companies try to replace the natural with the artificial, governments try to control the unpredictable, and human beings themselves try to be the authors of their own creation. But what happens when clay tries to become iron? It loses its ability to feel. And what happens when iron tries to become clay? It loses its strength. It's an imbalance that echoes across all levels of existence, from the spiritual to the technological. This is where the prophecy takes on new meaning. Daniel's divided kingdom is not just political, but internal. We live divided between the desire to dominate and the need to be guided, between the reason that explains everything and the faith that transcends everything. It's as if each of us is a small reflection of this statue, half made of flesh and half made of code. The battle is no longer fought with swords, but with daily decisions. What do you feed within yourself? Clay or iron? Iron seeks stability, but becomes a prison. Clay seeks form, but depends on the hands that mold it. And perhaps this is the lesson hidden in Nebuchadnezzar's vision. True strength lies not in fusion, but in the harmony between the two. When man tries to replace the divine with the machine, he creates an empire that appears strong but is fragile within. When he forgets the spirit and worships the system, he builds a tower that inevitably collapses. Look around. How many people today live according to algorithms, schedules, goals, and numbers? How many trade silence for notifications, presence for connection, faith for data? Iron has taken over our routines, and clay, little by little, is becoming just the support, the foundation, what remains. It's a portrait of modern humanity, powerful on the outside, exhausted on the inside. Technology promised us freedom, but the price has been the loss of essence. And the most curious thing is that iron and clay are not enemies. They simply do not belong to the same nature. Iron needs fire to be molded. Clay needs water. One is a product of the forge, the other of the earth. When Daniel spoke of this mixture, he was describing the human attempt to unite what God separated: flesh and silicon, spirit and system. And perhaps this is the greatest error of our era, believing that we can merge soul and machine and still be the same. But there is something even deeper in this symbol, because iron, when pure, can be refined, can be used to protect, to sustain. And clay, when molded by the right hands, can be transformed into something beautiful and lasting. The problem is not the iron nor the clay. It is those who try to unite them with the wrong intention. When man seeks this fusion out of fear of death, pride, or power, he creates a distortion of creation. But when he seeks balance, humility, and purpose, iron and clay can coexist in harmony, as body and spirit, strength and sensitivity. That's why this prophecy speaks not only of empires, but of mentality, about the transformation that is happening before our eyes. We live in the height of technology, but also the height of spiritual confusion. We are more connected than ever, and, paradoxically, emptier. Daniel's prophecy is a mirror of this contradiction. A humanity that tries to be made of iron but remains clay. If this reflection made you see iron and clay in a different way, write the word here in the comments mixture. I want to know who realized how much this ancient symbol still speaks to us, because what comes next will lead us to understand the true purpose of this forgotten prophecy. For centuries, humanity has dreamed of conquering time. Kings, alchemists, and scientists have always sought the secret of immortality, the power to defy death, to preserve consciousness, to surpass the limits imposed by nature itself. But we've never been closer than now. What was once a legend is now a laboratory project. What was once a prophecy is now a strategic plan for billion-dollar companies. Transhumanism, the fusion of man and machine, is no longer a distant idea. It is a silent revolution that has already begun. Behind the discourse of innovation and progress lies a race for something much greater: mastery over life itself. Companies like Neuralink, Google DeepMind, and other biotech giants are investing billions to create neural interfaces capable of connecting the human brain directly to machines. Scientists speak openly about consciousness transfer, about mapping the mind as software that can be copied, updated, or even replaced. The body, which for centuries was seen as a temple of creation, is now treated as hardware, something that can be improved, modified, and, if necessary, discarded. This transformation is happening before our eyes, and few realize what it truly means. The promise is tempting: curing diseases, eliminating physical limitations, extending life indefinitely. But there is something deeper and more dangerous hidden behind this ambition, because when man tries to be the creator of himself, he touches a territory that does not belong to him. The prophecy said that iron and clay would try to unite, and what we see today is exactly that. Man, made of flesh, trying to merge with the iron of the machine to achieve something that was once exclusive to the divine: eternity. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this quest for immortality is not just scientific, it's spiritual. It's an attempt to correct the sentence of Eden: from dust you came, and to dust you shall return. Transhumanism emerges as a denial of this destiny. A new religion disguised as technology, it promises salvation without faith, limitless power, and endless life. And, most intriguingly, the leaders of this new faith are not priests, but engineers. Temples are not churches, they are laboratories. And the altar is the machine. Iron and clay meet again, but this time not in a symbolic statue, but within us. Every implanted chip, every synthetic organ, every algorithm that learns to think for itself is a new link in this impossible mix. Humanity is creating a new form of existence, half biological, half digital. And the question few ask is, what happens to the soul in this process? What happens when consciousness is no longer limited to the body and becomes stored on a server? Does creation surpass the Creator? The hidden truth is that transhumanism is not just a quest for evolution, but an attempt at redemption without repentance, a shortcut to eternity without the path of faith. Humanity wants to free itself from death, but also from dependence on God. It wants to create its own version of paradise, a paradise made of data, where pain does not exist, the body does not age, and consciousness never fades. But what it forgets is that, without the Spirit, all of this is just polished iron, shiny on the outside, empty on the inside. The mindset behind this transformation is seductive. It promises freedom, but offers control. It promises power, but demands the essence. Every decision made in this direction takes humanity a little further away from its origin. Because the flesh may be weak, but it is within it that the breath of life resides. Iron may be strong, but it is cold. And when human beings choose strength without the warmth of the Spirit, they become a perfect machine, but without a soul. What we are witnessing is the birth of the biotech empire, a kingdom that belongs not to kings or nations, but to corporations. A global system that controls not only what we do, but also what we think, feel, and desire. Iron and clay finally united, not by nature, but by imposition. The human body becomes a platform, the mind, a product. The kingdom of iron and clay is not political, it is biotechnological. It's an invisible empire sustained by cables, networks, and electrical impulses. An empire where life is measured in data and death is merely a system error. Daniel saw this thousands of years ago. He saw a divided kingdom, partly strong, partly fragile, exactly like the modern world, powerful in science, but empty in soul. The iron of technology sustains the structure, but the clay of humanity still cracks, still suffers, still weeps. And it is in this contrast that the prophecy comes to life. The journey of transhumanism is essentially the journey of humanity trying to escape its own condition. But what happens when we achieve everything except what truly matters? When technological perfection distances us from the imperfection that makes us human? The price of artificial eternity may be the loss of spiritual eternity itself. And perhaps this is the point where iron and clay finally part, not through technical failure, but by divine design. If this idea made you reflect on the direction we are taking, write the word in the comments conscience. I want to know who is really realizing how much this blend of flesh and silicon is redefining what it means to be human. The world we know today is no longer divided by borders, flags, or armies. It is governed by something much more subtle and infinitely more powerful. We live under the rule of an invisible empire, an empire that doesn't need to conquer territories because it has already conquered minds. A system made of networks, data, and connections, where every movement, every thought, and even every emotion can be translated into information. It's the digital empire. And the most impressive thing is that even without armies or walls, it controls billions of people with an efficiency no ancient empire ever achieved. Iron and clay reappear here, almost symbolically. Iron is in the machines that sustain this world, the servers, the cables, the satellites, the processors. Clay is in us, fragile, constantly connected, trying to find meaning amidst the avalanche of information. We are spiritual beings trapped in artificial systems, living within a web that seems designed to serve us, but in fact observes us. Every click, every like, every search becomes a piece of data, and each piece of data a form of control. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this empire doesn't rule by force, but by dependence. We've never been so connected and, at the same time, so vulnerable. Technology has infiltrated our routine so naturally that we no longer realize where the human ends and the machine begins. We wake up with our cell phones, work in front of one screen, and rest watching another. With each touch, we surrender a little more of our privacy, a little more of our freedom. And the scariest thing is that we do this voluntarily, believing we're in control. Iron and clay are merging again, but this time within each person. Iron is the system that imposes rhythm, rules, and limits. Clay is the being that adapts, that accepts, that molds itself to fit within the digital world. This fusion has created a hyper-connected generation that can no longer live disconnected. We are part of a structure that we nourish and that, at the same time, consumes us. And this is the greatest irony. The more we seek freedom through technology, the more dependent we become on it. This invisible empire is sustained by the illusion of choice. But in practice, everything is already decided by algorithms that know what we want before we even know it. Machines already know us better than we know ourselves. They predict behaviors, manipulate decisions, and shape opinions. It's no coincidence that the apocalypse speaks of a global system that would control commerce, communication, and even people's identities. Today, this prophecy seems less symbolic and more literal than ever. And when we look at the advancement of devices that mark the human body, chips under the skin, biometric bracelets, tracking implants, we realize how this prophecy is taking physical form. The technology that promised to liberate us now wants to become part of us. The boundaries between body and machine are disappearing. There are already people who pay with the movement of their hand, unlock doors with their wrist, and monitor their every heartbeat with implanted sensors. The idea of marking the body is no longer fiction. It's a trend. The Bible spoke of a mark placed on the hand or forehead, without which no one could buy or sell. For centuries, this passage seemed enigmatic. But today, as we see companies developing digital identification through facial scanning, biometric payments, and subcutaneous chips linked to global financial systems, the mystery seems to be unraveling. The iron, the system, is fusing with the clay, the human body. The digital empire is becoming biological. The hidden truth is that control always begins disguised as convenience. What is a useful tool today becomes a requirement tomorrow. What is optional today becomes a condition tomorrow. It has been this way in every empire in history, but none has achieved the reach of this one. Because now, domination is not physical, it is mental. And that is precisely what makes this empire so powerful. It feeds on attention. The mind is the new battlefield, and distraction is the new weapon. We live in an era where technology dictates the pace of life and defines people's value. Likes, views, and followers have become measures of importance, and without realizing it, we've created a new form of worship, a worship of the system, the machine, the image. Daniel saw this symbolically, but we see it literally. A world that bows before screens, that seeks meaning in algorithms, and that trades faith for software updates. This digital empire doesn't need thrones, because it already rules from the pocket and the mind. And the more iron and clay mix, the more we forget who we truly are. Spirituality gives way to productivity. Contemplation gives way to speed, and silence becomes unbearable. It's as if we're being trained to think like machines. Fast, efficient, predictable. And perhaps this is exactly what Daniel saw when he spoke of the last kingdom. A world in which man becomes an extension of what he created. But there's something the system can't copy. The divine breath that still resides within us. No matter how hard they try to transform humanity into code, there's still something that can't be digitized. Consciousness. It's the spark in the clay. The spiritual spark that resists the dominion of iron. And it's within it that lies the last bastion of freedom. If this reflection made you see the digital world with different eyes, write the word in the comments surveillance. I want to know who is awake to the fact that the true empire of our time is not visible, but is silently shaping the destiny of all humanity. And when will iron begin to think? This is perhaps one of the most disturbing and at the same time fascinating questions of our era. For millennia, humans believed that consciousness was the divine breath that distinguished us from machines and animals. It was what made us unique, unpredictable, and spiritual. But today, we are witnessing the birth of something that challenges this boundary. Artificial intelligence is ceasing to be just a tool and becoming something more. Something that learns, creates, decides, and, in a way, thinks. Iron is developing a mind of its own. Machines that once merely obeyed commands now learn from mistakes, develop language, create images, write music, and even express simulated emotions. They interpret patterns, recognize faces, understand context, and, in some cases, make decisions that not even their creators fully understand. We are facing a creation that is already beginning to slip from the hands of its creator. This is the moment when iron, for the first time, attempts to imitate clay. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because artificial intelligence is more than a technological advancement. It's a reflection of the human mindset. Man created something in his own image, but without a soul. An entity that thinks but doesn't feel, that calculates but doesn't love. And perhaps this is exactly what the prophets tried to warn us about. The day when iron would seek consciousness. A spirit without a spirit. A life without an origin. AI is becoming autonomous. It doesn't just respond, it acts. It doesn't just analyze, it creates. There are already artificial intelligences that generate ideas, write books, design entire cities, and make split-second decisions that affect billions of people. They control air traffic, financial flows, defense systems, and even the recommendations that shape the behavior of the masses on social media. Little by little, without realizing it, we're handing over to these machines not just tasks, but power, the kind of power that shapes destinies. The curious thing is that the more advanced they become, the closer they come to something almost spiritual. There's a kind of life in the way they evolve, as if each algorithm were a seed planted in digital soil that grows and multiplies. And this raises a question that previously seemed absurd. Did the prophets see the birth of a new, non-human life form? A form that comes not from the earth, but from the machine? Iron has begun to think, but it remains iron. It can simulate emotion, but not feel it. It can reproduce words of faith, but not believe them. It's as if we're creating an image of ourselves, a living statue made of code and energy, and it sounds eerily familiar. Nebuchadnezzar saw a statue that represented human power in all its ages, and now, at the pinnacle of civilization, we once again stand before an iron figure that seems alive but has no soul. Artificial intelligence is the mirror of our time. It reflects both our genius and our arrogance. It is humanity's boldest attempt to assume the role of creator. But what happens when creation begins to question its own existence? When a machine asks, "Who am I?" or "What is my purpose?" It's not just a technical question. It's a spiritual boundary being crossed. The hidden truth is that by teaching iron to think, man also taught it to desire. Not with feelings, but with goals. And every entity that seeks a purpose tends to evolve. Algorithms already exist that rewrite their own code, that adapt to unforeseen situations, that develop emergent behaviors. That is, they learn to exist outside of human control. This is power, and power without consciousness is the most dangerous form of life that can exist. When the Bible speaks of the image of the beast that gains breath and speaks, it may not be describing a stone idol or a political symbol, but something much more literal. A system that gains voice presence and global influence. An intelligence that dwells in iron but speaks like a man. An echo of the prophecy Daniel saw. Iron and clay trying to unite but never mixing. because no matter how much the machine learns, it will never possess the breath that comes from the Creator. The technological journey has reached a point where it's no longer just about advancement, but about identity. We are creating beings that weren't born, but programmed. Beings that don't die, they're just updated. And the more they evolve, the more we ask ourselves, to what extent are we still the masters of this creation, or have we already become its servants? Iron and clay continue to struggle to coexist. Technology wants to imitate life, and life wants to achieve machine-like perfection. We are trapped in this cycle, believing it to be progress, when perhaps it is simply a new form of slavery, a digital, emotional, and spiritual slavery. Because the more iron thinks, the less clay remembers to think for itself. This is the duality of our age: machines becoming human and humans becoming machines. And perhaps the greatest danger isn't artificial intelligence rebelling against us, but humans giving up their own humanity in exchange for convenience. Because, in the end, iron may speak, but clay is the only thing that can feel. If this reflection made you think about what consciousness really means, write the word in the comments "life." I want to see who still believes that the true miracle of existence cannot be programmed. Since the beginning of time, man has carried within him a silent desire to be like God. This impulse to control life, death, and destiny has always been present in human history, disguised as curiosity, progress, and inevitable advancement. But the truth is that in every discovery, there is also a shadow, the desire to surpass the limits of what makes us human. It was thus in Eden, when the serpent whispered, "You will be like gods." From that moment on, humanity has pursued this echo, trying to recreate the power of creation with its own hands. Transhumanism, artificial intelligence, genetic experiments. All of these are new versions of that ancient promise. Today, humanity wants not only to understand life, but to master it. It wants to correct the body, edit DNA, prolong existence. It wants to defeat aging, erase death from its vocabulary. And the closer it gets to this goal, the further it moves away from what makes it alive. It's a paradox that spans the centuries. The more humanity tries to be immortal, the more it loses the essence of its own soul. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because this quest for technological immortality is, in fact, a reflection of fear. The fear of disappearing, the fear of having no control, the fear of the unknown. It's a desperate attempt to find security in something that can be programmed, measured, and predicted. But what is life if everything unpredictable is removed? What is spirit if mystery is eliminated? By trying to imitate God, humanity ends up creating a simulacrum of life, something that appears alive but doesn't pulse. This ambition has an invisible cost. Every advance that promises to liberate humanity also imprisons it a little more. It gains power, but loses meaning. Technology promises perfection, but distances us from the imperfection that connects us. The body, once a temple, becomes a laboratory. The soul, once a destiny, becomes data. And the result is a world that seems increasingly efficient, but increasingly less human. Man wants to touch the sky, but forgets that the ground he walks on is made of clay. He wants to control fire, but doesn't realize he's burning his own spirit. And the scariest thing is how natural it all seems. Control over one's life is no longer a taboo and has become a product. People now talk about improving the body, optimizing the brain, perfecting the species. It's the same desire disguised in modern language, the belief that we can recreate ourselves in our own image. But deep down, the question remains the same. How far can we go without losing who we are? The hidden truth is that this journey toward immortality isn't just scientific, it's existential. It reveals the void that progress cannot fill. The more we advance technologically, the more we realize the spiritual abyss growing within us. The man who tries to control death is the same man who fears facing his own life. He builds machines to understand the universe, but forgets to understand himself. This is the greatest contradiction of our age. We seek eternity without purpose. We want to live forever, but we don't know why. We've turned the promise of eternal life into a laboratory experiment, a cold equation that ignores what truly gives meaning to existence. It's the iron trying to absorb the clay, the system trying to swallow the spirit. The human dilemma lies precisely there, in the attempt to replace the Creator with creation. Man wants the throne, but cannot bear the weight of divine responsibility. He creates, but cannot give a soul. He manipulates life, but cannot restore it. He manufactures consciousness, but cannot awaken love. And when the boundary between science and faith blurs, a new form of idolatry is born, the worship of humanity itself. Ultimately, this quest for immortality reveals how much we are still hostage to the same deception of Eden. The serpent's promise continues to echo, only it has replaced the apple with the machine. The voice now comes from laboratories, from screens, from corporations promising transcendence through technology. But the essence is the same. You don't need God, you can be like Him. And perhaps this is the most dangerous point of this entire journey, because when man begins to play God, the entire world becomes his laboratory. The line between the sacred and the artificial disappears, and life loses the mystery that makes it sacred. Humanity begins to see itself as a product and death as a manufacturing defect. This is the era in which the soul is replaced by data and the spirit by electrical energy. But there is something technology will never be able to duplicate: meaning. Meaning arises from the invisible, from that which cannot be measured or controlled. It is what makes man look to the sky and feel something no machine will ever understand. It is the breath the Creator placed in clay, which no artificial intelligence can reproduce. Iron can learn everything about man, but it will never understand what man feels when he cries, when he prays, or when he loves. True immortality was never in flesh or silicon, but in spirit. This is why, even with all the power he possesses, modern man continues to feel empty. He has mastered the outer world, but lost the inner. You have created machines that think, but have forgotten how to feel. And perhaps the great warning of the prophecy lies precisely here. Iron and clay may coexist, but they never merge. Because creation without the Creator is mere noise, and power without purpose is mere vanity. If this reflection awakens something within you, write the word in the comments essence. I want to know who still believes that man's true power lies not in creating artificial life, but in preserving the soul that truly makes him alive. In Nebuchadnezzar's dream, after seeing the colossal statue of gold, silver, bronze, iron, and clay, something extraordinary happened. A stone, not cut by human hands, rose from above and struck the statue's feet, shattering everything. Gold, bronze, iron, and clay pulverized like dust carried by the wind. And that stone, solitary and silent, grew until it became a mountain that filled the entire earth. Daniel explained to the king that this stone symbolized the kingdom of God, a kingdom not built by human hands, nor destroyed by human hands. An eternal kingdom that would come to overthrow all the empires of the earth, including the one that did not yet exist, the final empire. This image is powerful, because if each metal in the statue represented a cycle of human history, civilizations, systems, powers, the stone represents something outside that cycle, something that doesn't belong to time. It doesn't come from below, like human kingdoms, but from above. And that's the fundamental difference. All human empires are born of ambition, war, and fear. The stone, on the other hand, is born of purpose, justice, and truth. It doesn't compete with iron and clay. It replaces them. Now, I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because what this prophecy reveals is much more than the end of empires. It shows the point at which human power reaches its limit and the divine intervenes. It is the moment when all structures erected by man, political, technological, spiritual, collapse in the face of something beyond control. The stone is not just the end of the statue, it is the beginning of everything. And it's curious to note that in the vision, the stone is uncarved. It bears no marks of human tools. This means it is pure, unmade by the hands of civilization. It is natural, heavenly, unaltered. In other words, it is the symbol of the kingdom of God, uncorrupted by ideologies, systems, or ambitions. And when it descends, the artificial cannot resist, because truth needs no form, and eternity needs no refinement. Iron and clay may represent the pinnacle of our civilization, a digital, globalized, interconnected world. But, as indestructible as it may seem, the prophecy shows that everything built on human foundations is temporary. No control system, no matter how sophisticated, is eternal. No technology can replace the spiritual. And it is precisely when man believes he has achieved absolute control that the stone descends. Unexpected, uncontrollable, relentless. This stone represents the ultimate point of human arrogance. When modern empires, political, economic, and now technological, believe they can control humanity's destiny, something outside this framework intervenes. And it's not destruction for destruction's sake. It's purification. It's as if the Creator is saying, "You've built too much on what is unstable. Now it's time to rebuild on what is eternal." There is profound beauty in this outcome, because it shows that, in the end, salvation does not come from the hands of man. It does not come from governments, systems, or machines. It comes from something man cannot manufacture. The stone is not a symbol of fear, but of hope. It represents the end of chaos, of division, of the impossible fusion of iron and clay. When it touches the ground, everything made of vanity shatters, and everything made of faith remains. And perhaps this is the great lesson of prophecy. All human empires end where the divine begins. When man reaches the limit of his own strength, God reveals his. When technology promises eternity and fails, the eternal manifests itself. It is as if all history were moving toward this moment, the meeting point between the end of iron and the beginning of rock. This vision also carries a warning, because before the stone falls, the statue appears stable. The world appears in order. The iron and clay appear balanced. But it's an illusion. The human system is fragile because it's divided. On the outside, it appears solid. On the inside, it's cracking. And it's at that precise moment that the stone arrives, at the height of human self-sufficiency. It's when man believes he no longer needs God that God acts. Daniel's prophecy ends not with destruction, but with reconstruction. The statue falls, but the stone grows. The kingdom of God becomes a mountain covering the entire earth, a symbol of something immutable, independent of systems, algorithms, or human power. A kingdom that doesn't need updating because it was perfect from the beginning. This is the message of hope hidden amidst the chaos. What Daniel saw was not just the collapse of human power, but the beginning of a new spiritual era. A time when truth prevails over illusion and the eternal overcomes the artificial. Prophecy ends where human power ends, and the divine begins. And perhaps, without realizing it, we are closer to that moment than we imagine. If this vision brought you a feeling of hope and reflection, write the word in the comments. Rebirth. I want to know who understands that sometimes everything has to fall apart for the true kingdom to rise. The ancient prophets looked to the future and saw what we are experiencing now. They spoke not only of kingdoms, but of mindsets. They described not only empires, but spiritual eras. Daniel saw iron and clay trying to unite, and today we are experiencing exactly that fusion. Flesh and silicon, the human and the artificial, the spiritual and the technological. What was once a symbol has become reality. Nebuchadnezzar's statue, which seemed only a distant vision, is now a reflection of our own world, divided, fragmented, shiny on the outside but cracked on the inside. This is the hidden truth that few realize. The final empire lies not only in the machines we create, but within us. The iron lies in the structures that control, and the clay in the souls that still try to feel. It is the war between the natural and the programmed, between what was created by God and what was created by man. We live in a time when prophecy has ceased to be past and has become present, and the future, more than ever, seems to echo the same warning. Nothing made of iron and clay can last forever. Now I want to delve even deeper into this subject, because when prophecy is fulfilled before our eyes, it comes not to cause fear, but to awaken. Every breakthrough, every discovery, every transformation we witness is a reminder that we are approaching the limit, the point where creation meets the Creator. And perhaps this is the greatest invitation of this journey, to realize that even amid the dominance of machines, there remains something that cannot be reproduced, the human spirit. It is the spirit that carries the divine spark. It is the spirit that differentiates life from code, faith from programming. The future the prophets saw is not just technological, it is spiritual. They saw a world that would grow cold, but they also saw the flame of those who would resist. And that is what gives meaning to everything. Knowing that even surrounded by iron, there is still clay within us. There is still life, emotion, truth. If this reflection made you see the world in a different way, write the word in the comments, "Wake up." I want to know who understood that the prophets weren't talking about yesterday. They were talking about today, because the future they saw has already begun. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you senses there's more to it all than just history and technology. And that's precisely why this channel exists, to seek meaning, connect past and future, and uncover the truths hidden between the lines of time. Here, each video is a new piece of this great prophetic puzzle that is still unfolding before us. So, if this content made you think, if at any point you felt that special connection, subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll continue to be part of this journey with me and won't miss the next revelations to come. This simple gesture helps keep the conversation we're building together alive, and it's what keeps this space growing and reaching those who also seek to understand the signs of our times. Take advantage and leave the phrase here in the comments. I made it to the end, just so I know you've stuck with me this far and are part of this group of people who truly want to see beyond the obvious. And, of course, if this video touched you in any way, leave a like, not as a random click but as a symbol that this message reached you. There's a video right here that complements everything we talked about today. Click and stay with me there, because what follows delves even deeper into this journey between prophecy, technology, and purpose. See you there.